In this lecture, we will discuss chemical reactions and the importance of carbon. Here are two substances, highly reactive sodium and water. If we put them together, neat things happen. A chemical reaction. In reality, the reaction of these chemicals is amazing, and you can watch a video on this in the Activities folder. We can represent the reaction with a chemical equation. Not as exciting, but still very important. On the left we have the reactants, those atoms or molecules that will react, sodium and water. And on the right, the products of the reaction, sodium hydroxide and hydrogen. Now, notice the numbers in front of some of the reactants and products. These are called coefficients. They are needed to balance the equation. 2 sodium atoms and 2 water molecules are needed to produce 2 sodium hydroxide compounds and 1 hydrogen molecule. We have 2 sodium atoms on the reactant side and product side. We also have 4 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. Balanced. But if we were to try this reaction out in a lab, how would we know the exact amount of reactants to add for the reactions to occur properly? We would need a really tiny pair of tweezers to count out atoms and molecules. Luckily, we don't have to do that. Let's look at this equation. Hydrogen and oxygen combine to form water. But how much hydrogen and oxygen do we use? Well, in a lab, we use moles. No, not those kind of moles. This kind of mole. 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. That number is a mole. That is a really big number, right? Why is this number special? Well, if you weigh out the molecular weight of an atom or molecule in grams, you will have 1 mole of that substance. Need an example? Okay. Here's our equation again. What we first need to do is find out the molecular mass of the reactants, hydrogen and oxygen. So look at your periodic table and find the mass number for hydrogen and oxygen. Okay, the mass numbers are approximately 1 for hydrogen and 16 for oxygen, but they are in their molecular forms, so we need to double that number. Okay, here's our moles. In 2 grams of molecular hydrogen, we find a mole, 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd, of hydrogen molecules. And 1 mole of molecular oxygen would weigh 32 grams. So that's a mole. But what about our experiment? How much of each reactant would we need to add for the equation? Well, we don't have a coefficient in front of the oxygen molecule, so we would just need to add 1 mole of that. But how many moles do we need to add of the hydrogen? Yes, 2. So we would add 2 moles of molecular hydrogen, which weighs 4 grams, and 1 mole of molecular oxygen, which weighs 32 grams. All life requires energy, and cells obtain energy in many different forms. The bamboo in this picture captured and converted light energy into chemical energy of sugars. And the panda must consume the bamboo to convert the energy stored in the sugars into different types of chemical energy to fuel his metabolism. But let's start with the basics. The definition of energy is the capacity to do work or supply heat. And there are 2 main types of energy. Potential energy is the energy of position. The gingerbread man at the top of the stairs has potential energy because gravity is trying to pull him down to a lower position. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. When the gingerbread man falls down the stairs, he is in motion. The stored potential energy is now put to use to send him plummeting down the stairs. Thermodynamics is the study of energy. If we are studying the energy requirements of a student, we must not only consider the student, or the system, but also their surroundings. Biological systems are open systems because they exchange energy with their environment. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. The universe contains a certain amount of energy, and that will never decrease or increase. But energy can be converted into different forms. For example, this is a bioluminescent gyanoflagellate, Pyrodinium bahamense, that has converted the chemical energy of its food into light energy. It did not create energy, it merely changed one form of energy into another. The second law states that disorder, or entropy, continuously increases. This is because no energy conversion is 100% efficient. During the conversion process, some of that energy is lost as heat. Notice I said lost, not destroyed. This heat cannot be converted into another type of energy. So unusable heat is building up in the universe with each energy conversion, and this increases entropy. It takes usable energy to maintain order. Now, all organisms obey these laws. As we discussed at the beginning of this presentation, when a plant captures light energy, that energy must be converted. That solar energy is converted into the chemical energy of sugars through photosynthesis. And all living organisms store chemical energy in the form of chemical bonds. To understand how this is accomplished, let's examine how energy plays a part in chemical reactions. There are two main types of chemical reactions, exergonic and endergonic. Exergonic reactions are spontaneous, which means the reactants have enough free energy for the reaction to occur. Free energy is the energy associated with the chemical reaction that can be used to do work. Exergonic reactions release energy, and the products of an exergonic reaction are at a lower energy than the reactants. Remember the bombardier beetle? When the two chemicals in his abdomen come together, an exergonic reaction occurs and energy is released. Much of this energy heats up the liquid product to almost 100 degrees Celsius. Endergonic reactions are not spontaneous. There is not enough free energy to provide the energy required to form a product. So energy from an external source is required for endergonic reactions to occur. The products of endergonic reactions have a higher potential energy than the reactants. The formation of sugars in photosynthesis is an endergonic reaction. Solar energy supplies the extra energy required to form bonds and rearrange carbon dioxide molecules into molecules of sugar. This reaction cannot occur without that extra energy. In fact, these two types of reactions work in concert in cells to power metabolism and maintain life. The energy released from exergonic reactions fuel endergonic reactions. They are coupled, meaning we first must have the energy-releasing exergonic reaction before the energy-requiring endergonic reaction can occur. Now we need to learn more about the specific types of molecules found in organisms. All life forms are carbon-based. This is due to the bonding characteristics of carbon. Carbon has 4 valence electrons and can complete its outer shell by forming 4 covalent bonds. It can form 4 bonds with 4 hydrogen atoms to produce a methane molecule. This is the simplest hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbons consist of only carbon and hydrogen atoms. Or we can add another carbon atom with hydrogens, and this is ethane. And we can keep adding carbons. As you can see, covalently bonded carbon atoms can form a backbone or skeleton that other atoms such as hydrogen can bond to. When we see molecules with carbon skeletons, they are likely to be organic molecules. Organic molecules are made by living organisms. In biology, we use a special word for the creation of molecules: synthesize. Now, hydrogen is not the only thing that can be added to a carbon skeleton. Other atoms can be added, but in organic molecules, we are most concerned with special groups of atoms called functional groups. There are many functional groups, but you're required to know only 6 of them. The first is hydroxyl. It consists of an oxygen bonded to a hydrogen atom. The R represents the organic molecule. Since this group has an electronegative oxygen, it has the property of being polar. It may also lose its hydrogen in solutions with a pH of 7 to become an ion. The carbonyl functional group consists of a carbon double bonded to an oxygen. The oxygen makes this group polar as well. Carboxyl consists of a carbon double bonded to an oxygen and single bonded to an oxygen with a hydrogen. This group tends to be acidic in solutions with a pH of 7, as the hydrogen dissociates from the molecule. The amino group has a nitrogen bonded with 2 hydrogen atoms. It tends to act as a base because it binds with hydrogen ions when in a solution with a pH of 7. Remember, if a substance decreases the hydrogen ions in a solution, it is a base. Sulfhydryl consists of sulfur and hydrogen. It has a tendency to form disulfide bonds with other sulfhydryl groups. We will explore these bonds more later on in the class. And the phosphate group has a phosphorus double bonded to an oxygen and single bonded to 3 other oxygen atoms. Phosphate groups are negatively charged at a neutral pH and can store large amounts of energy in their bonds, especially when multiple phosphate groups are connected to each other. So let's redecorate this boring hydrocarbon and add some exciting functional groups. Let's first add a nitrogen with 2 hydrogens. Which functional group is this? Yes, the amino group. And what kind of property does it have in a neutral pH? Yes, it acts as a base, taking up hydrogen ions. What is this group? Yes, hydroxyl. And what property does it have? Yes, the oxygen is highly electronegative and makes the group polar. And what is our last group? Yes, phosphate. And phosphates have high energy bonds connecting the functional groups. These functional groups can give molecules interesting properties